Most dangerous force shaping human history is not violence, nor chaos, nor even deception. It is something far quieter, something so subtle that most people never notice it operating. It is too late. Silence does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. It does not provoke immediate resistance. And that is precisely why it works. When people imagine power, they imagine noise, speeches that shake crowds, revolutions that burn cities, leaders who dominate the room with their voices. But if you look closer, fallen empires, at corrupted societies, at personal lives, quietly steered toward outcomes never consciously chosen, you begin to notice a different pattern. The most decisive moments rarely happen during moments of uproar. They happen in the pauses, in what is not said, in what is allowed to pass without objection. Silence creates the illusion of normality. It convinces people that nothing is happening, that there is nothing to resist, nothing to question. While attention is drawn toward spectacle and conflict, silence works in the background, shaping decisions, reinforcing hierarchies, and guiding behavior without ever revealing its hand. It does not need to argue. It does not need to persuade. It simply waits for fear, uncertainty, and habit to do the work for it. There is something deeply unsettling about silence because it forces the human mind to confront emptiness, and the mind despises emptiness. It fills the void with assumptions, anxieties, and imagined intentions. In silence, people reveal more than they ever would through words. They confess through their discomfort. They submit through their inaction. History is filled with moments where nothing seemed to happen, until everything had already changed. Laws passed without protest, truths buried without denial, power transferred not through force, but through quiet acceptance. Silence is not passive. It is not neutral. It is active, deliberate, and often weaponized. The unsettling question is not whether silence is powerful. It is why it works so consistently across centuries, across human nature itself. And once you begin to see how silence operates, it becomes impossible to unsee the invisible hands guiding the world through what is never spoken, to understand why silence can be more powerful than speech. We must step into a world where words were dangerous and honesty could be fatal. Renaissance Italy was not a place of stability or moral idealism. It was a fractured landscape of city-states, betrayals, assassinations, and shifting alliances. Power changed hands not through elections or virtue, but through cunning, timing, and survival instincts sharpened by constant threat. In this world lived Niccolò Machiavelli, a man often misunderstood, not because he promoted cruelty, but because he refused to lie about how power truly works. He did not write about how rulers should behave in a perfect world. He wrote about how they survive in a hostile one. And what he observed again and again was that those who spoke too freely rarely lasted long. Machiavelli watched leaders destroy themselves with promises they could not keep, moral declarations that exposed weakness, and speeches that revealed intention. He saw that visibility invited attack, transparency invited manipulation. Silence, on the other hand, created uncertainty. Uncertainty bred caution in enemies. Exiled from political life after a shift in power, Machiavelli experienced silence not only as theory, but as reality. Stripped of influence, ignored by those he once served, he learned firsthand how power operates when it withdraws its voice. Silence was not absence. It was distance. And distance protected those who understood how to use it. In Machiavelli's world, restraint was not virtue, it was armor. Saying less meant revealing less. Reacting less meant controlling more. Silence allowed a ruler to observe without committing, to wait while others exposed themselves. It was not kindness. It was not wisdom in the moral sense. It was realism. This is where the myth begins to crack. Silence was never about weakness. It was about survival in a world where every word could be turned into a weapon. Silence is uncomfortable because the human mind is not designed to sit with uncertainty. When words disappear, the brain does not relax, accelerates. It searches for meaning, for intention, for threat. In the absence of information, imagination takes control. And imagination, more often than not, leans toward fear. Psychologically, silence creates a vacuum, and human beings are compelled to fill vacuums. When someone refuses to explain themselves, to react, or to respond, we begin to project our own insecurities onto that silence. We assume hidden motives. We replay conversations. We overanalyze expressions. The silent individual remains still, while the other reveals everything through their reaction. This is why silence holds such power in negotiations, confrontations, and relationships. The one who speaks first often exposes the most. They reveal what they want, what they fear, and where they are willing to compromise. The silent presence, by contrast, remains unreadable. And unreadability triggers anxiety. It creates imbalance. From an evolutionary perspective, uncertainty was dangerous. Not knowing whether a threat was present kept early humans alert and stressed. Silence activates the same ancient mechanisms. The mind prefers even bad news over no news at all, because certainty feels safer than ambiguity. Silence denies that comfort. Machiavelli understood this instinctively, long before psychology gave it language. He saw that people feared what they could not predict more than what they could openly oppose. Silence forces others to act impulsively, to speak carelessly, or to retreat altogether. It creates movement without moving. What makes silence terrifying is not what it contains, but what it withholds. It turns the human mind against itself. And once someone realizes this, they no longer need to dominate conversations to control outcomes. They simply need to let others unravel in the quiet. There is a quiet pattern that repeats itself wherever power is contested. The one who speaks the most usually understands the least. Loudness is often mistaken for strength, but in reality, it is frequently a signal of insecurity. Those who feel compelled to announce themselves are rarely in control. They are seeking it. The loud man reveals his intentions before he ever realizes it. Every argument exposes what he values. Every justification reveals where he feels threatened. Every unnecessary explanation is an invitation for others to exploit him. Words, once released, cannot be retrieved. They become evidence, leverage, and liability. Machiavelli observed that rulers who constantly spoke of virtue were often the first to betray it, not because they were hypocrites by nature, but because speech forced them into positions they could not maintain. Promises created expectations. Declarations created limits. The more a leader explained themselves, the more predictably, therefore controllable, they became. Silence, by contrast, offers no such foothold. The silent observer does not argue. They measure. They do not react. They wait. While others exhaust themselves trying to dominate the narrative, the silent figure watches patterns emerge. Ego drives people to speak. Control requires restraint. This is not an argument for wisdom through ignorance. It is an observation about exposure. Power does not collapse because it is evil or wrong yet. The loud man believes attention equals influence. But attention attracts resistance. Those who endure learn this lesson the hard way. Strength does not announce itself. It positions itself. And in the long run, the one who speaks less often decides more. Silence is most effective when it is mistaken for absence. People assume that if nothing is said, nothing is being done. But in reality, silence is often deliberate, withholding a calculated refusal to reveal intent, emotion, or information. And withholding creates imbalance. When someone stays silent, they control the pace. They force others to move first, to fill the gap, to negotiate with uncertainty. This is not manipulation through deception, but through restraint. By giving less, the silent individual gains more information, more leverage, more psychological ground. Machiavelli understood that people fear being ignored more than being opposed. Opposition confirms relevance. Silence denies it. It leaves the other person suspended, unsure whether they are being evaluated, dismissed, or quietly judged. This uncertainty erodes confidence and invites mistakes in power dynamics. Silence shifts control without resistance. There is no argument to win, no statement to refute. The silent actor does not need to convince anyone. They simply wait for others to overextend themselves. In this way, silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back the insecurities of those who cannot tolerate it. This tactic appears everywhere: in politics, where unanswered questions slowly normalize uncomfortable truths; in institutions, where delayed responses exhaust opposition; in personal relationships, where emotional withdrawal becomes dominance. Silence trains others to adapt, to lower expectations, to accept conditions without explicit consent. What makes this form of control so effective is that it rarely feels like force. There are no visible chains, no commands, only an empty space where resistance should have been, and the slow realization that the outcome has already been decided. Crowds are loud by nature. Emotion spreads quickly, among them fear, anger, excitement, amplifying the next. Individual judgment dissolves into collective impulse. This is why crowds crave clear signals, strong voices, and visible certainty. And it is precisely this hunger that the quiet ruler exploits. The one who speaks less appears heavier, more deliberate, more important. Silence creates distance, and distance creates authority. When a leader does not rush to explain or justify, people assume there must be a reason. Depth is projected where there may only be restraint. Meaning is invented where there is simply absence. Machiavelli recognized that people judge power not by what it is, but by how it appears. A ruler who remains composed and silent while others shout seems unshaken by chaos. The crowd interprets this calm as confidence. The fewer words offered, the more weight each word carries when finally spoken. Silence also protects authority from contradiction. The more a leader explains, the more opportunities they create for disagreement. The quiet ruler avoids debate altogether by offering ambiguity instead of clarity. They allow followers to interpret reality in ways that suit their own beliefs, binding them emotionally without ever persuading them logically. This dynamic is not limited to kings or politicians. It appears wherever groups gather, in institutions, movements, corporations, and even cultural icons. The figure who remains just out of reach, who withholds full access, commands more fascination than the one who is constantly visible. The crowd believes it is choosing whom to follow. In truth, it is responding to psychological signals it barely understands. And silence, when wielded correctly, speaks louder to the masses than any speech ever could. Silence manipulates not by lying, but by letting others lie to themselves. History is often imagined as a record of decisive actions, bold speeches, and dramatic turning points. But beneath those visible moments lies another force quieter, less documented, and far more influential. What is remembered is shaped not only by what happened, but by what was never challenged, never questioned, and never spoken aloud. Silence determines which events become footnotes and which become myths. When dissent is muted, narratives solidify. When uncomfortable truths are left unaddressed, they fade not because they were false, but because repetition was denied to them. Over time, absence hardens into acceptance. Machiavelli understood that control over silence is control over memory. Power does not need to erase history. It only needs to guide attention. By allowing certain stories to circulate while others quietly disappear, authority reshapes reality without confrontation. Silence becomes a filter through which the past is interpreted. Many empires did not collapse because no one warned of danger, but because those warnings were ignored, delayed, or buried beneath indifference. The tragedy is not that people spoke too late, but that silence made it possible to pretend nothing was wrong until collapse felt sudden and unavoidable. This is how history is rewritten out, with censorship alone, but with selective quiet. The loudest voices are remembered. The quiet resistance is forgotten, and future generations inherit a version of reality shaped by what was allowed to echo and what was left to vanish. Silence is not neutral in history. It is an editor, and like all editors, it decides what survives and what is quietly erased from collective memory. In the modern world, power no longer needs to shout. In fact, it rarely does. We live in an age saturated with noise, constant updates, endless opinions, relentless outrage. And within this noise, silence has become even more effective. When everything is loud, what goes quiet disappears from scrutiny today. Control often operates through what is delayed, buried, or left unresolved. Decisions that reshape lives are made behind closed doors, summarized in vague language, or released when attention has already moved on. The public debates symbols and scandals, while structural power shifts quietly in the background. Silence is no longer empty. It is carefully timed. Machiavelli's insight fits this world with unsettling precision. Modern systems do not need to persuade the masses directly. They only need to manage focus. Algorithms decide what is visible. Institutions decide what requires explanation, what does not. Silence becomes procedural, bureaucratic, invisible. What makes modern silence so powerful is that it masquerades as complexity. When explanations are absent, people assume matters are too technical, too distant, too complicated to understand. Silence is interpreted not as concealment, but as inevitability. And inevitability discourages resistance. In politics, unanswered questions fade into background noise. In media, stories vanish not through censorship, but through lack of follow-up. In corporate power, silence appears as neutrality, even while consequences unfold in slow motion. No villain steps forward. No voice claims responsibility. This is not the silence of ignorance, it is the silence of design. A system that never has to defend itself because it never fully reveals itself. And in a world obsessed with expression, those who control silence quietly control outcomes. Power has not become more transparent. It has simply learned to speak less. Let distraction speak for it. Most people believe that silence signals peace, agreement, or freedom. We are taught to value calm, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. Yet, more often than not, silence is not a choice, it's compliance. It is not liberation, it is surrender. And the line between freedom and submission is far thinner than we imagine. When people remain silent in the face of injustice, confusion, or manipulation, they convince themselves that nothing is happening. They mistake absence of noise for absence of control. But power does not require consent, it only requires inaction. Silence allows authority to act without challenge. It lets decisions slip by unnoticed, truths fade unanswered, and control tighten quietly, almost imperceptibly. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. In his world, the masses rarely spoke out, not always because they agreed, but because the cost of action was high and the rewards uncertain. Silence became a survival mechanism, but it also reinforced power. The quiet consent of the many validates the authority of the few. It is a subtle, invisible force that shapes societies more reliably than protest or rebellion ever could. Even today, the illusion persists. We remain quiet because resistance feels futile. We nod, scroll, or turn away, believing that our silence does not matter. Yet each unspoken objection, each passive acquiescence, becomes a building block for systems that operate without accountability. The unsettling truth is that silence is often mistaken for freedom, when, in reality, it is the language of control. To recognize it is the first step toward understanding how influence operates not through loud declarations, but through the quiet spaces where the world allows itself to be guided without notice. Silence is not inherently good or evil. It is a tool, and, like any tool, its moral weight depends on who wields it and how. In the hands of the powerful, silence shields decisions from scrutiny, conceals errors before they can be challenged, and isolates those who might resist. It protects reputation, authority, and influence, often at the expense of transparency and justice. Machiavelli recognized that those in power are rarely constrained by morality in the way the public expects. Their survival depends not on truth, but on perception. Silence becomes armor. By refusing to explain, to defend, or even to respond, the powerful force others to negotiate reality on their terms. They dictate the pace of events while remaining untouchable. Yet this protection is morally ambiguous. While silence may preserve stability, it also fosters complicity. Those who remain silent, whether out of fear, habit, or calculated restraint, enable power to grow unchecked. Silence is both shield and weapon. It deflects criticism while simultaneously shaping the thoughts and actions of those who would challenge it. This is the paradox of control. The silent ruler appears confident, composed, and wise, but that composure often masks manipulation. The absence of explanation creates trust where none may be deserved, and obedience where there may be disagreement. Understanding this dynamic is essential, not to justify silence, but to see it clearly. Power thrives not only on action, but on the absence of it. And the quiet moments, the things left unsaid often, determine outcomes far more decisively than the loudest proclamations ever could. Even the most calculated silence has its limits. No strategy, however subtle, can indefinitely suppress human awareness or reaction. At some point, pressure builds, curiosity transforms into suspicion, and the quiet that once commanded control begins to unravel. Silence delays confrontation, but it cannot eliminate consequence entirely. Machiavelli acknowledged that restraint, like all tools of power, is situational. Silence works best when uncertainty benefits the observer. But when events accumulate, when frustration grows, or when fear transforms into action, the very people who were kept in suspense can erupt. Words may finally be spoken. Movements may form. Truths that were buried in quiet emerge with force. History offers countless examples. Empires fell not because their rulers were loud, but because their silence allowed warning signs to be ignored until the collapse felt sudden. Societies tolerated injustice until collective anxiety reached a tipping point. Individuals waited, endured, and observed in silence, since silence became unbearable. And the accumulated weight of the ignored led to rebellion. Silence, then, is not absolute power. It is conditional, effective only as long as the audience remains uncertain, compliant, or disengaged. The moment that condition changes, silence loses its potency. Understanding this boundary is crucial. Those who wield silence must recognize that restraint is never permanent control. and those who live under it must see that quiet is not inevitability. Every unspoken word carries both power and risk, both for the one who remains silent and for those who finally decide to break it. Silence is neither inherently virtuous nor morally corrupt. It is a mirror, reflecting both the intentions of those who wield it and the assumptions of those who endure it. Machiavelli offers no comfort, no moral resolution like clarity. Power, he shows us, is often quiet, deliberate, and invisible. An understanding that changes everything. The question he leaves us with is simple, yet profound. Now that you recognize how silence operates, how it shapes decisions, guides perception, and manipulates thought, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you allow yourself to be quietly guided, lulled into complacency by the absence of sound? Or will you confront the quiet, question it, and act before inertia becomes control? Silence is powerful because it is underestimated. It does not seek attention, and that is precisely why it dominates. Recognizing it is not a call to speak incessantly, but to see the spaces where meaning is withheld and to understand the forces at play. Awareness transforms silence from passive inevitability into something you can navigate consciously. Machiavelli's world was harsh, but his insight remains strikingly relevant. Power often advances not through noise, but through the absence of it. Societies, leaders, and individuals are shaped in the gaps, the pauses, the unspoken agreements. The unsettling truth is that silence will continue to win, lest we choose when, how, and whether to break it. And the moment we do, we reclaim not just control over outcomes, but clarity over our own perception of the world. Silence is a weapon, a shield, and a teacher, we must decide how to engage with it before it decides for us.